Good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome to the annual general meeting of the Rotary Club of Kilkenny. This is held by Zoom for this year. It's a it's an unusual format and it's an unusual event, but it is a pivotal part of our annual projects, our annual things that we have to do. And it's an opportunity to look back on the year, a year that has posed many challenges, a year that has given us many opportunities, and a year of some disappointments. But it's also been a year of sadness in that we lost our lifetime member, Michael Mahoney, during the year. And we should acknowledge the work that he did. One of the projects that was initiated during his tenure of office was the Remembrance Tree project. And I think it's poignant that we were able to hold that event this year in spite of the restrictions, because it happened just at that brief opportunity that we had to meet in public for a very brief period just before Christmas. We'd like to remember Michael and his family at this time. We're also very conscious that a lot of our members aren't able to join us by Zoom, and it's important that we make contact with them at some stage during the year. One of the things that has happened this year is in very recent times, and that's going to require the knowledge or the affirmation of our members, is the appointment of the president-elect for the year 2021-2022. Robert Robert Williams had been selected and had a year and a half to prepare for the role of president-elect. He's just joining us now, but unfortunately he's not been able to carry out that role. And he spoke with his own president-elect, Stephen Costello, to see if Stephen would be willing to take on the role of president-elect a year ahead of schedule. In order to affirm that, we require a vote of members present at this meeting. The council has already approved this, but we're anxious that all the members who are present at the AGM have an opportunity to either confirm or otherwise this proposal. I don't know, Robert, if you're willing to talk to us about the reasons that you've had to take time out from the role of president-elect. Are you there, Robert?
Yes, I'm here. Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon.
Do you just want to say anything about your proposal to select Stephen as your president-elect?
Rather than why I'm doing it?
Well, either. Either.
Well, both, if I may.
Yes,
if I can firstly give the club my apologies for this. As I explained to the council, when I was asked to be president, firstly, I was delighted, and I would very much want to be. That's where I'm coming from. I added two caveats. One was that I have to spend a fair amount of the year in the UK. And the second was that at about the same time I was asked, I was found to have a cardiac condition called aortic stenosis, which would require a heart valve replacement at some stage in the near future. In the last few months, both of these have accelerated, and as we've been locked down, my annual visits to the UK are going to have to be concertinaed into the second half of this year. So I'm going to be away an awful lot. And also my heart valve condition has progressed at a fairly alarming rate. So I'm quite likely to need a valve replacement certainly within the next 12 months. Well, most likely within the next 12 months, possibly within the next 6 months. So with those two, I felt that I couldn't continue because I would be unreliable. I would be missing a lot and unreliable. And because of that, I tendered my resignation. Very sadly, I very much wanted to do that. But I was delighted that Stephen could step up and do this at the time.
Thanks, Robert. I now have to put it to members as to whether they approve of this or not, or if they wish to abstain. So I'm putting up a poll and I don't know whether you can see that poll, but you have an opportunity to support this motion. The proposal is to elect Stephen Costello as President-elect for the year 2021-2022. You can support it, not support it, or wish to abstain and to have your this is confidential, by the way. I do not know, and nobody will know, who has voted in what way. So I'm just waiting for the poll to complete. There's somebody else joining in.
I won't vote in.
You can vote.
Don't think I will.
I won't know, but if I accept that, if I find that you've suddenly decided to put in, I do not support this motion, then I'd really be concerned. Admit Terry Foley. I just give everyone a chance to. There are 16 members present, but so far 11 have just voted. I'd ask the others to submit their vote before we close it. There are three options: to support, not support, or to abstain. I'm just trying to admit. Now, we have 75% of people have voted. If anybody is unable to vote, I hope everyone can see the poll on their screen. 13 people have voted. Okay, I'm going to close the poll at this stage, and I'm delighted to confirm that there was 100% approval of all of those who voted in favour of Stephen being the. I'm going to share the results just to prove it. Can you see those? Right, that's the result of our poll. I'll just download that, save it. Now, there we are. Now, let's stop sharing that screen and close the poll. Now, we'll now begin the formal part of our annual general meeting. I'm going to share my screen with you. Can you see that? Can everyone see that? This is the agenda for today. There'll be a short introduction, first of all. Then we look back at our club assembly of 2020 to 2021. We look at the various committees that we have, some of which have been more active than others, and there'll be a short report from each of them insofar as that's possible. Community, the international, a treasurer's report, executive secretary's report, looking at foundation briefly, our public image, which has been valuable in the last year, fellowship, membership, and the Interact Club, and finally looking ahead to the coming year. So first of all, we had our handover held outdoors in the McDonagh Junction at the beginning of July last year, when Jason handed over the chain of office to me. I got an opportunity to wear that chain of office, I think, 3 times in the last year. First of all, we did manage to have 2 meetings indoors in August. We'd hoped to have more, but obviously couldn't. I also wore it when we were engaged in the Aid to Lebanon project, and again at the in relation to the Bikes for Africa launch in earlier this year, or at the end of last year. Our club assembly took place 52 weeks ago today, and or rather, yes, it's the 18th of May last year, and we looked at the theme of the year: Rotary opens opportunities, and we had wonderful ideas. We were going to do so much during the year, but as they say, the first plan to have is to have a plan B, and we didn't have a plan B, but we carried on nevertheless by looking at the different opportunities that were open to us. We set out a plan for the year, and we looked for an agreed and renewed commitment from members. The photograph that I include in this is one that Jason had last year. It's one that I only got to ring twice during the year. But the club assembly was an important part of it. Focused our minds and I think set out the plan as best we could. But it also gave us the opportunity to see what Rotary is really about. That it's not simply a case of us meeting together. We're part of a worldwide organisation, and we do have the benefits and the challenges that that offers. We had to think of a new way of meeting, and nobody was caught out in any way negatively by our Zoom meetings. You see in the picture there that we had to think of how if we do meet by Zoom, what's the best way of capturing this new form of communication. If we were simply to meet and talk, we'd run out of things to say very quickly, particularly since we couldn't have an opportunity to actually do anything. But we looked at how what did we do that could now be done by Zoom? And one of the things that we did was to invite people to talk to us. And over the year, we had 25 people joining us. These were all people who had some connection either with Rotary, with Kilkenny, or with the wider world. The first person we spoke to was the newly appointed Minister of State, Malcolm Noonan. This was a great start to the year, and it was also a great start for Kilkenny, because having a Minister of State based in the city is something very much to be valued. Jerry Cody joined us talking about the Involvement Centre. Nisha Nunn, who's involved in both Kilkenny tourism and in various festivals that are being run in Kilkenny, had a really interesting perspective on things. Olga Barry joined us from Kilkenny Arts Festival, and how they were changing their way of running things for during the pandemic, and running some events in the theatre in the Watergate, some live events, and some by virtually. And they had to adapt really quickly to the new way of doing things. And also they had to adapt with not generating an income. Nicky Brennan joined us, and he had a very interesting perspective to tell us, because he actually, apart from his own history and his own story about being involved in the GAA, about being involved in Avonmore, also had COVID, and spoke about how his own physical activity saved him from the worst effects of COVID. Andrew McGuinness joined us to talk about his new role as chairperson of Kilkenny County Council. Colin Ahern spoke about being president of the Chamber of Commerce. Brian Keyes, who was then editor of the Kilkenny People, talked about the role of local newspapers in a community during a pandemic, as well as his own history. He stepped down from that role, and his role has been taken over by Sam Matthews. But he has a wider role in the organisation that runs the Kilkenny People. Liam Keane joined us from Kilkenny Voluntary Housing, which is probably the most valuable organisation in Kilkenny at the moment, in that it has diminished the needs for families to stay in hotels in Kilkenny. Between the Kilkenny Voluntary Housing Association and the Good Shepherd Centre, both of which share many of their board members, Kilkenny Voluntary Housing was set up as part of the Good Shepherd Centre. And the work that the two organisations are doing has set a standard for other counties to follow, in that Kilkenny is the county that uses the Capital Acquisition Fund more than any other county apart from Dublin. And this has meant that the Good Shepherd Centre and the Kilkenny Voluntary Housing Association now run almost 200 separate properties, looking after over 250 individuals who might otherwise have ended up homeless. Tom Moore was initially to join us at one day, but our technology didn't quite work. So he joined us on another day and to talk about wolf walkers, which has projected Kilkenny into the stratosphere and given our the history of Kilkenny, put it on a platform that is seen around the world. Hopefully, wolf walkers will become a classic and will enhance tourism to the medieval city. It's the first film that is set in medieval Kilkenny that has had a worldwide platform through Apple TV. Connie Ovison is the district governor for Rotary, and she joined us in early December. And she was really looked at all the positives out of the year. And that picture, I think, encapsulates her optimism and her enthusiasm. We were really grateful that Claire McInerney was able to put us in touch with her brother, Professor James McInerney, at the end of last year. And he spoke about the pandemic and how the medical service is responding to it. Greg Price was the HSE coordinator for the contact tracing in the south part of the country, and it was actually the most watched, or the second most watched of all the recordings of our Zoom conversations. Niamh Mulholland spoke about the Rotary Foundation, and she, I think, really should be going far in this in Rotary. She was so enthusiastic, so committed, and also had a unique perspective on the role of the foundation in Rotary. Sarah Dre joined us from the Kilkenny Citizens Information Service, which is dealing with the effects of the pandemic for everyone, and they're responding by phone to all the queries that they get, which are so multifaceted. And the unique thing about the Kilkenny Citizens Information Service is that it deals with queries which deal with several different departments. If you go to the tax office, you'll get information on tax. If you go to the county council, you get information about the county council. But the Citizens Information Service can bring information that ties all the strings together, and that enables people to think about social welfare and the tax implications of it, and also the possibility that they might be entitled to something they didn't realise they were entitled to. Alan Haw is Deputy Chairman of the Labour Court, and he joined us to talk about the Workplace Relations Act from both an employee's and an employer's perspective. Tom Malloy's talk was probably one of the most vibrant of the talks, because he told several stories that have resonated with people, about his grandfather being the first Lutheran pastor to have been sacked by Hitler, to his off-the-cuff comment that he drove Joe Biden around in Dublin when he came back to Trinity after he was vice president. Ian Hamilton's talk on brewing was the most viewed of all the talks that we had, but possibly that was because Ian himself used it to circulate amongst his own colleagues. Selena Grace talked to us about the Kilkenny Volunteer Centre and how we may help them and how they might help us. And this is particularly important when we look at how we re-engage with the public once we're looking for volunteers in our Remembrance Tree project, which will hopefully be back again in 2021. Gus Mabelson spoke about Kilkenny as a centre of craft, and he had hoped that there would be a result there are only, I think, 3 craft centres of excellence in Europe, and Kilkenny was due to be nominated, or was nominated, but due to be, they would hear whether they were successful or not by the end of March. And we hadn't heard anything. And I said, oh, maybe it hasn't worked. But unfortunately, what happened was that the head of the World's Crafts Council actually died, and died from COVID just before the announcement was to be made. So that has been delayed for some time as they get their act together following that very sudden shock of the chief executive, of the chairperson, or the person in charge dying suddenly. Dennis Malone joined us from Kilkenny County Council and spoke about the role of the County Council in planning for the future. Blaise Smith spoke about his work as an artist, and we were also joined by John Hayes, who is famous for his wood carvings using a chainsaw. And Linda Hogan, who was a candidate for the provostship of Trinity, joined us last week. And probably one of the most informative of all was the talk by Anne O'Carroll on Making a Will Won't Kill You. And that is a presentation that people who haven't had an opportunity to do so would look at and get some hints about what to do, and to be very careful about what not to do when making a will. And even the most expert person will have some things that they won't have thought of, or that they weren't advised to, that they thought was the right thing, and the mistakes won't emerge until after they're dead, by which time it will be too late. So I would urge anybody who hasn't had an opportunity so far just to flick through that talk that was given to us. One of the best things that we did was get our engagement with the community. And when Jason was president last year, he looked after the Gala Dinner that was held in the River Court, and we really must extend our thanks to what Trish Murphy and her staff did to enable that to be such a success. One of the positive things was that money was raised. One of the negative things was that we really struggled to get people to attend, and it was due to the efforts of Rotary and SOS that only ourselves were at it. But enough people were there, it was a success, and the money raised went to SOS, and they purchased a magic table. And Anne Carr has circulated a video, which I'm now going to show to you, about how the magic table works. I'd like to thank Anne Carr for that. Anne Carr sent us that video just recently. And the great thing about it is that not only did we raise money for it, but Foundation helped us as well. So we really do thank everyone for making that such a valuable asset to SOS. And hopefully, once the pandemic is over, we'll actually get to see it physically ourselves. One of the other things that it engages us most of all is the Remembrance Tree project. This year, obviously, we tried to do it online. We raised 1/10 of what we would normally raise. And I looked at that initially as a bit of a disappointment. But on the other hand, I also looked at it, it was a tenth, it was €2,800, which is actually not, it's a bit more than a tenth, about an eighth of what we would normally raise. It's 2,800 that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to raise. And I know that the home care team was pleased with and delighted to get that, because their funding has diminished so much in the last year. We concluded our work with the Remembrance Tree Project by having a service on Christmas Eve, which we broadcast, which was broadcast on Kilkenny Community Radio, as you can see there in the background. We were honoured to have both Bishop Michael Burrows and Bishop Dermot Farrell in probably one of the last public engagements that he was involved in prior to his elevation as Archbishop of Dublin. We're It was a poignant occasion, but it was great that we could hold it outdoors and obviously with all social distancing taken into account. We cleared it with the Gardaí ahead of schedule as well. I'm going to ask Jason if you'd come in and talk about perhaps some of the work that you've done as part of the international team in Rotary. Can you talk to us, Jason?
No problem, Zine. Thanks very much. And good afternoon, everyone. Just to give you a brief update under the international area, which was led by John Hurley from the point of view of our club. I'm not sure if John is with us. I can't see the breakout there now.
Yes,
but
I think it's there as Kilkenny Chamber of Commerce, I think.
Yeah, I'm here, Jason.
Sorry, John, I don't want to overstep the mark here now. If you want to...
No, work away, you work away.
No problems at all. So look, the areas of international work for Rotary Kilkenny have continued this year under the Bikes for Africa project, which goes from strength to strength, and the template in Kilkenny has been replicated in 11 different centres across the country, and that's soon to grow to 16 for this year's round of funding. So thanks to everyone involved locally, and to the great support from everyone out in the recycling centre and bikes in Kilkenny County Council. I know that for the third year running now, Kilkenny County Council have applied for grant funding for this project, and it's brilliant. It will help to support and drive it on even further. So appreciate that. The other areas then that we were involved in, the slides have gone on me there, Ian.
Oh yeah, I'll bring it back up. I was let.
No worries. Yeah, so I mean, for the second year running then, Rotary Kilkenny were involved in the Aid to Lebanon project, and it was a great inspiring project this year in the autumn, ably supported by the Army recruits, as you can see there. And we are currently receiving back images of some of the kids who are receiving us literacy aid and sports equipment in Lebanon. So it's great to see the fruits of our labour. And again, Loreto Secondary School and CF Pharma were very generous with their donations. The three areas that we're focusing on from an international district point of view are the School Bikes Africa, the UN humanitarian aid to Lebanon, and a new project to Rotary Kilkenny that I hope I can encourage us to support, which would be to support a water project in Rombo in Kenya to bring fresh, clean water to a school of 650 kids who currently use what can be described as a dirty river to supply them with water. So you'll hear more about that in time. That's it, Ian. Thanks very much.
Great. And Jason, as Executive Secretary, would you like to tell us about your role? First of all, what the role involves, and then you might talk us through what has happened during the year.
You put me on the spot here again, Ian. What the role involves? You expected I have the answer.
Yes, but you've had the answer.
I'll make one up, okay? So the Executive Secretary's role within the club is to manage the IT system in the background and all of the input that goes on to my Rotary and updating of the club's database and goal center for all of the projects that are there. So that's effectively it. It's in addition and in support to the normal club secretary's role. So anything that exists on my Rotary for Rotary Kilkenny, I have access to edit and to update, and that's effectively the role. So what it means for Rotary Kilkenny, well, this year we would have had about 20 projects uploaded onto it, which follow on from the plan that would have came about this time last year at Assembly. Needless to say, due to the pandemic, many of those projects haven't been fulfilled, but we will update the ones that have been that we have been actively involved in and keep our database up to date. Some of the memberships then will need to be updated as well. 59 was the starting figure last year, Some of the members have expressed that they're not going to be rejoining, so we will need to reduce that back to 55. So that's effectively 18. Nothing too exciting.
Well, no, but it's such an important job that needs to be. It's one that we need to keep tabs on. I think the Rotary website, it's complex, but it's also a very valuable resource for us. And I think the more people that use it, the more engaged they will be. So thanks, first of all, for your report, and also thanks for taking on this role during the year. Um, the next talk, a very brief talk, is about the foundation. Unfortunately, Dermot is not able to join us today. He had hoped that he might be able to towards the end. But Niamh Mulholland spoke to us earlier in the year about the work that the foundation is doing and how they have helped us in the last year. I'll come on to that specifically in a moment, because Rotary was able to give somebody's. I'm just going to ask somebody to mute whoever's to mute themselves there. The foundation. Sorry, my apologies. The foundation's work, and Dermot has done a lot of work in trying to expand our involvement with the Rotary Foundation. In many ways, it's the gold standard of membership. If people can become lifelong foundation members, make a commitment, then you won't notice the money going out, but the money that goes in will come back to us in many ways. And it's also spreading the Rotary message worldwide. We will be talking more about foundation before the end of the year, particularly during our club assembly. But I'm going to move on, if I may, to our public image. And again, unfortunately, Roisin can't be with us today, but Roisin has done no end of work in particularly keeping our Facebook page up to date. I mean, even after last Saturday's district assembly, she had pictures up and had a report available. We have apparently about 643 people following our Facebook page. And we'd urge people to share it with friends of theirs. Cyan Malachny has been a great asset to us in enabling us to have articles in the Kilkenny People. And we featured twice during the past year. First of all, when Jason handed over to me in July. And also I was asked to contribute an article at the beginning of the year. And it took up a full page. It coincided with the week that Sam Matthews was appointed as editor of the Kilkenny People, and someone it was actually someone said that the Rotary page got more publicity than his appointment. But I think, mind you, that his appointment will be significant in years to come. But Cyan, I'd like to thank you for the work that you've done for us, and that you continue to do, not just in relation to the Kilkenny People, but you've also sourced speakers for us, one of which was Linda Hogan's talk last week, and the other will be next week's talk with Etienne Holohan from Fennelly's in Callan. But Rotary Kilkenny is no good unless people know what we're doing. We shouldn't be hiding our light under a bushel, to use a biblical cliche, but we need others to know the work that we're doing. And Facebook is perhaps the most effective way of doing that, and local newspaper and local radio. And we have had several interviews on local radio that have been well received and gets the message out. And all of that will have to continue during the coming year. So Cyan will be looking at you, hopefully we'll be able to use your platform to enhance the role of Rotary in Kilkenny. Fellowship is something that Nora has been assiduously looking at. Nora's work in keeping in touch with members, in ensuring that those they get the phone call if something happens, that they get a card if they're ill, is invaluable. And I'd like to thank Nora for all the work that you've done with such good heart. It's been a pleasure working with you during the year, because this year of all years, fellowship is important. We can't meet physically, therefore the personal touch provided by Nora is something that keeps us rooted to our core values. Is there anything you'd like to say, Nora, in relation to fellowship, in relation to some of the challenges that you faced?
One of the things we talked about it before, and I think it might be a good idea, but would it be too, invasive maybe, if I made phone calls to members that are not on Zoom?
Yeah, no, I think that would be a great idea. I think that would be a great idea. Do you have the contact details for everyone?
I have a list, but I'm not sure how comprehensive it is.
I have the full
especially
list.
now since I hear, and I'd need to know the members that are no longer members.
Yes. Well, I'll send that list to you, and I'll
Okay, thank you.
and we can follow up on that. Okay. Thank you, Nora, for all
Great, thanks.
that you've been doing. Membership is something that, well, Linda has spoken about the drop off of membership. It is a challenge when we're not out in the public face doing things to draw people to us, but it is something that we will be working on in the coming year. Interact has been perhaps one of our biggest successes. I include some pictures there that perhaps could also have been included in the international section of the books that were collected by the Interact Club in Loreto in Kilkenny that made their way to the Lebanon. But the other initiative, they undertook a couple of initiatives during the year. The first was the Ice for iPads project, when they heard that the School of the Holy Spirit was unable to make contact with the most vulnerable of their students because they didn't have access to mobile technology. They took it on themselves to collect old iPads in good working condition and to get them to the pupils and their families in the School of the Holy Spirit. In addition, they raised money to buy new ones, and they set up a GoFundMe page that raised almost €3,000. This was then matched by the Rotary Foundation when we got a grant from them of an extra €2,000. So that brought it up to a substantial amount of money, which really helped the School of the Holy Spirit. But they undertook another initiative, and this was off their own bat, and this was to write to members, to send a card to people, and this they did just in the last couple of weeks. And I think nearly every member will have got a card from them. And I really want to express our appreciation to Elaine and to the members of Rotary, the Interact Club in the Loreto, for all that they did. The other thing that they've done is enhance their own membership. There are now, according to Elaine, who couldn't be with us today, there are now 44 members of the Interact Club in the Loreto. And I think that exceeds our expectations. And indeed, if we could match that growth, we'd be doing very well. So I really think the Interact Club this year has been one of the shining lights of the last year. So now it's the opportunity to look ahead, to look where we go from here. Are we going to sustain our members? Are we going to retain the ethos of the club, considering that we've had such a challenging year? My own view is that the virtual presentations will still play a role when we get back to meeting in the clubhouse, that perhaps members who can't join us could join us still by setting up a camera, perhaps so that they can see what's happening and maybe keep in touch that way. The other thing is that the use of technology has enabled us to make contact with speakers that we wouldn't otherwise have had. So perhaps we could have speakers joining us while we're sitting around the dinner table, have speakers join us by Zoom, and that they can log into us and we can interact with them virtually. So the future beckons brightly, and that's the reason for the sun at the end of that road. I see that Rotary, the need for Rotary has will always be there. What matters is that we, through our contacts, get people to follow us and to contribute, not just their physical presence, but also their ideas and their enthusiasm and their values. And we look forward to a productive year when Stephen takes over on the 1st of July. That's all that I have to say from the official point of view. Is there anyone who has any comments that they'd like to make?
Yeah, Ian, as your AG and as a member, I first of all like to congratulate you on your role as president in what has to be one of the most trying years for Rotary of the First and Second World Wars. And I take my hat off to you. Kilkenny has been a shining light in activity in this over this last 12 months. In particular, the way you yourself personally pioneered and led the speaker program, which was an example for that many other clubs envied and actually attended and took part in, as you know, not only in the zone but nationally. So on behalf of the members, I'd like to thank you for a fantastic job that you've done in such trying times. And that's not really much more I can say, but you know,
thank you.
All presidents in this year have been faced with something that no past experience could have prepared you for.
Thank you, Joe. And I must say that your guidance and that of Jason and Stephen and Robert has been so helpful to me in the last year. But because in many ways I was relying on following what happened before. And when that couldn't happen, I needed to bounce ideas off you all. And you were really helpful in guiding me through this year. So to Jason and Joe in particular, I really wish to thank you for all your help, guidance, and inspiration in many ways. Now, is there anyone else who has any comments that they'd like to make before we conclude the official part of the AGM? I do have one item that we have to bring before, and that is to approve the subscriptions for the coming year. And that will, could I just take, if you could, I didn't actually put this up in the poll, but if you select the reactions part, you'll see thumbs up, or you'll see an option for yes and an option for no. And what I'm going to ask people, if there's anything that, if the subscription, which we had at €200 for last year, going to try and see if it's viable to hold it at that. I think we should. And I'm going to propose that the subscription for the coming year remain at €200 per member. Could I have, could people select yes or no under the reactions section in the on the Zoom page? Right.
Ian, it may just be me, but I'm only getting either a thumbs up or a hand wave.
Right, a thumbs up will do, unless you want to give a thumbs down. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that we can take that as a positive, that there've been no thumbs down in all of that. So the proposal to have our annual fee at €200 remains. These can always be amended if circumstances dictate. I'd like to thank everyone for their contribution today, but also to thank you for your contribution in the past year. This couldn't have happened without the support and encouragement of you all. And I look forward to handing over to Stephen. We look forward to our club assembly, which will be held during the month of June at a date to be arranged. And I look forward next week to our speaker, Etienne Houlihan from Fennelly's in Callan. Okay, thank you all very much and look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, Ian. Bye now.